We're going to have three major segments tonight, and I'm going to do kind of the three major topics of the week. We're going to talk about some relevant stories that happen. We're going to talk a lot about immigration and all of the crazy things happening in that area this week. We're also going to talk a little bit about Elon Musk and his shenanigans, and then the attacks on democracy from all angles. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper tonight. I hope you're okay with listening along. Again, I am going to get to a guest section, but it might just be a while. But if you want to post questions, feel free to do that. All right, so top story here is immigration. I know I've been talking about it a lot, but to me, this is the issue that when we look back at this moment in history is going to be our darkest. We're already looking at people being snatched up. Some people, permanent residents. We've had, I think, one U.S. citizen. Foreign tourists are getting snatched up in airports. And of course, we've got a number of alleged gang members ignoring court orders and headed to El Salvador to a concentration camp. Yes, a literal concentration camp. They put them to work there without any due process whatsoever. And unfortunately, today, it gets worse. It always seems to get worse, so maybe I don't have to preface it that way anymore. But tonight, Trump has just moved to revoke the legal status for over 530,000 people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. These are folks who are legally here under a Biden-era program, and they now have just weeks before they could be deported. And so this is sort of an extension of what we saw with Venezuelans, but this is now taking it a step further. You're talking about 530,000 people, 500,000 people that could have their legal status revoked. So, and this is something that we've talked about a lot, right? Many Republicans over the years, I've heard, and I was one of them, say that I'm fine with legal immigration, I'm not fine with illegal immigration. Well, that doesn't appear to be the case because Donald Trump is attacking legal immigration over and over and over again, and this is again the case. This is legal status. We're also seeing people with asylum status being pushed out. Again, permanent residents, U.S. citizens. There's no end to this. And I think what we're looking at here is a progression into something, again, what I stated in the beginning, very, very dark. We've got concentration camps already in El Salvador that we're paying them for. Now, these are already there, of course, but we were paying them to house people that did not get proper due process that were sent there. And then we are sending some to Guantanamo Bay. I don't know what the number is on that. We saw the announcement a couple months ago, but we do know that's happening. They're also building detention facilities at military bases. And then they're going to keep working with other countries that, countries preferably for Donald Trump, obviously fellow authoritarians that he can push to do what he wants. And so that's what we're looking at. We are looking at people literally being snatched up and put in camps. This is Japanese internment, maybe even worse, because there's a soccer star from Venezuela who had been tortured in Venezuela and is now being detained. We've heard of treatment of people being stripped naked in airports, having to sleep on the floor with people they don't know. So this is really horrific stuff. And I know, unfortunately, that the country is really delayed on this. I've talked in length about immigration and how it's sort of a lot of solutions chasing an imaginary problem. But even if you do believe there's a problem, that there's an immigration problem, that's fine, right? But there is no excusing what Donald Trump is doing here. And if you do, I'd have to question your conscience, if you will. So if you're a Republican out there and you're supporting all these actions, I wonder how far you're willing to go. How far can this go? How far can he take this before you are outraged? Or do you just want him to round up anybody with tattoos, because that's been one of the qualifiers, tattoos, or with brown skin out of the country? Is that what you're looking for? And if that's the case, then be honest with people. We know what we're facing, but we're tired of you guys hiding. So immigration, I am going to continue to be pushing these stories out there, and I think we all should. I don't think we should be discouraged like Democrats are by the polls. People can change their mind. We've seen people change their mind in a very short period of time. We just saw recently in Canada, it was looking like their MAGA wannabe candidate was going to win. And now the Liberals, because of Donald Trump, should sail pretty easily to victory. And so people can change their minds very rapidly. And so we really got to push this out there and not give in. It's when we start saying things like what Biden did and start capitulating, right? You start talking about, oh, yes, there is too many immigrants coming at this time, instead of talking about the problems with Title 42 or, talking about the fact that these people coming, we need them, we need workers. There's a lot of angles of this that we weren't talking about it because we were afraid to lose an election. And guess what? We lost an election. So we've got to change strategy. I don't know when that's going to happen, but it needs to happen. Again, just kind of going further with this story. So these are Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans who entered the U.S. in as early as 2022 under 2-year legal parole will lose legal status on April 24th. And then he's also considering revoking legal protections for over 240,000 Ukrainians fleeing war. Yeah. This program was designed to keep safe legal entry and work permits for people fleeing instability. And that's what the United States of America is supposed to stand for, right? That's the Statue of Liberty. That's what we believe in. I thought. I guess not. Now we also have red states. Red states are going to continue to push harder and go further than the federal government possibly can. And now we're seeing that in the case of undocumented kids in public schools. So I did a post on this earlier this week, but states including Indiana, Tennessee, Texas, Oklahoma, and New Jersey all introduced legislation or administrative rules aimed at requiring proof of citizenship for K through 12 enrollment and charging tuition to undocumented students. Some don't even charge tuition, they just don't allow them to attend. This is obviously blatantly unconstitutional. So the Supreme Court ruled in Plylard versus Doe in 1982 that all children have a right to public education regardless of their status. And now we're looking at kids that are going to be kicked out of school in Republican states. So if that's something you're okay with, again, you know what I'm going to say. And then you counter that, right? What's he doing on the opposite end? Who's he bringing in? Who does he want here? We saw him announce his Trump gold card, or what he wants to call it, the Trump card, offering citizenship for $5 million to wealthy foreign investors, right? And we heard him in an interview talk about how he's not even sure how he's going to vet these people. So there's that. So he wants the rich here. He doesn't care what kind of people they are. He wants them here. This kind of echoes the Kushner EB-5 visa for investment scheme from the previous administration, but takes it a step further. And meanwhile, obviously, green card holders and U.S. citizens are facing deportation level scrutiny for very minor issues. We also have the South Africa program. There's the Afrikaners in South Africa, a white ethnic group of Dutch and French descent. Trump wants to offer them a special program to come here because he thinks they're facing persecution as white people in South Africa. So that's where we are there. All right, so I think that's enough with immigration. Let's this stuff can get really, really dark and depressing, and I apologize if that's where these things lead, but it is what it is. That's where our country is. So, all right, so let's get into attacks on democracy, a lighter subject. Yesterday, we had something very significant that's kind of going under the radar, and that's this situation with the Paul Weiss law firm. It's not the only law firm that Trump has pressured, but this is the one that he has gotten concessions from, and it was his number one target. Paul Weiss is one of the top law firms in the U.S., and obviously Trump has continued to use direct economic threats to interfere with legal accountability. Experts are warning a violation of judicial independence and undermining of confidence in our legal institutions. Trump is literally pressuring law firms that took clients that he didn't like and threatening them with a whole range of things. So this is where we're at. So when we talk about attacks on democracy, we're not just talking about attacks on the legislature. We're talking about all over the place. This guy wants to be a dictator, and this is what's happening. Thankfully, Chief Justice John Roberts does seem to have somewhat of a soul, as we have seen from him from time to time, and he did rebuke the president for some of his attacks on judges, and this comes from that El Salvador situation. The judge there who was appointed by Bush originally, then obviously pushed up to the appellate court by Obama. But this guy has ruled in favor of Trump many times. All he was asking for is a little bit of information, and now Trump's calling for his impeachment. And so Justice John Roberts spoke out about our 200-year tradition of not impeaching judges over disagreements with the decisions. So, again, here we are. All right, so we also have this week, we've got Trump's legal team filing a motion to disqualify a judge in a key election interference case. Trump allies have launched coordinated campaign to defund state election oversight boards. A coordinated campaign by Trump allies underway to defund state election oversight boards in key swing states. Legislation has been introduced to drastically cut budgets and limit the powers of these boards, raising concerns about potential election manipulation and voter suppression. So it's happening on a state level, it's happening on a federal level. These states can go much, much further. So if you are a blue dot, I'm just so sorry. Let us know how we can help you. Get to one of these rallies, one of these anti-oligarchy rallies with AOC and Bernie. These seems to be going pretty well. So get to a rally if you're a blue dot. All right, so now let's get to a little bit of Elon Musk, our favorite subject these days, of course. Elon Musk is, blaming protesters for Tesla boycotts and vandalism, talking about the radical left. Now, I don't want to gloss over this because, Republicans constantly throw out this radical left. And now we're seeing them attach certain things to terrorism. And we've seen time and time again with autocracies across the world. We've seen it with the Uyghurs in China. We've seen it in Russia. We've seen it in Hungary. We've seen it in Iran, and in all different forms, targeting the left wing, targeting socialists, targeting communists, and then lumping different groups into those categories. I told a story on here before of my grandmother. My grandmother was alive, during the communist scare of the early part of the last century, and she saw some of her neighbors taken from their homes for being communists. And communist is obviously a blanket term that they're applying for everything. None of us are communists, but that's what they're labeling us. So don't, gloss over that. When Elon Musk is calling them radical left-wing agitators, it's so that they can punish them in very extreme ways without due process. That's what they want to do. And so don't gloss over those things. Okay, give me 1 second here. All right, so this obviously comes amidst a growing boycott of Tesla. In Las Vegas, for instance, they actually had to buy parking lots just to keep Teslas because they don't know where to put them. So this is a company that is having serious problems. There are talking heads from the administration. Obviously, Trump had a campaign event an advertising event for Teslas on the White House lawn. We're also seeing surrogates go on shows trying to pump Tesla stock. Obviously against the law, but who's going to stop them? Once again, there's nothing wrong with boycotting Tesla. Don't do violence. One of the things we have to be watchful here too is not just this labeling of terrorism, but we're in a situation now, and I don't know that we're quite in the mindset yet to be able to deal with this, but we need to. And we're in a situation now where we have to look for false flags, something that we've seen Vladimir Putin do in other countries, something that we've seen China do. And so we've got to keep an eye out for these false flags. And unfortunately, when you call something a false flag, you look very much like a conspiracy theorist. I'm not saying that's what happened with the burning of these Teslas, but it is something that we have to watch out for, because they're going to look for anything that they can find to crack down. So if you're protesting, stay peaceful, please. And watch out for these false flags. Elon Musk's X, former Twitter, algorithm is under scrutiny for amplifying extremist content. The Washington Post reported today internal documents from X showing that the platform's algorithm consistently amplifies posts from accounts known for spreading extremists and conspiracy theories. Research found that even with user reports, these accounts receive disproportionate visibility, raising concerns about the platform's role in spreading misinformation. This is important information, but again, probably not a shock to any of us. The fact that he's actually elevating it, though, really should be another evidence point to his relationship with Vladimir Putin and his other relationship with autocracies around the world. His Neuralink is also facing new federal investigation over animal testing practices. So Neuralink, his brain implant company, is facing a fresh federal investigation following allegations of animal welfare violations during testing procedures. Musk Starlink under fire for alleged contract violations in Ukraine. Now, we know previously that Elon had pulled Starlink from Ukraine at very key times, and now we're seeing some consequences for that, but we'll see what comes of it. Ukrainian officials have publicly accused Starlink, Musk's satellite service, of breaching contractual agreements regarding its provision of internet access to critical infrastructure during the ongoing conflict. Allegations include sudden service disruptions and demands for payment increases, leading to concerns about the reliability of Starlink support in a war zone. So we're already seeing countries like Canada, some countries in Europe that are moving away from Starlink. So he's obviously got problems there. I don't know. This is one of the things that concerns me, is because Trump and Elon keep doing these things despite the consequences. Elon has lost an enormous amount of wealth, and that really concerns me. They don't seem to care. So what's going on here, right? Who's supporting them? Who's backing them? Why don't they seem to care? That's why we got to be concerned about what happens, not only in the midterms, if there are midterms, but in the next election. Again, if there is a next election, well, this guy's not planning on going anywhere. If he was planning on going anywhere, he wouldn't be doing any of these things. He'd be too afraid. So unfortunately, that's not the case. All right. Well, that's all I got for you. I appreciate you guys letting me test this out a little bit. Different format here, but I do want to open it up to guests. So if you want to come on, I saw somebody was just here but left. Feel free to join. I'm not going to be on too long tonight, but I do want to get in a little discussion. So if you happen to be a Trump supporter out there, come on down. How about knowing how our government works? You referring to me, something? Be more specific. Just so if you don't know my background, I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I have spent 15 years in public policy on both sides of the aisle. I used to be a Republican. I worked for Republican members of Congress. I'm now a Democrat. I work for Democrat members of Congress. I used to work for Katie Porter. I also used to be a law and public policy professor. I have a JD. And so if he's telling me that I don't know how the government works, I'm not sure that's entirely accurate. J-Mac, what's going on, my man?
Not much, man. Just here in Central Texas for a wedding tonight.
Oh yeah, how's that?
Yeah, my one of my best friends from high school football, his daughter was getting married, so we're up here. I'm just having a little smoke break. Thought I'd come on and say hi, man. Hey,
Nice. Well, it's good to hear from you. It's been a while.
Yeah, yeah, sure has. Hey, I was gonna ask you, man, what are your thoughts on the dismantling of the Department of Education? Because, and
Sure.
maybe you could set me straight here, but the way I see it is if you live in a poor city that doesn't have a lot of money, a lot of funds to get you the nice computers and the nice books, you would get some federal money to kind
Is
of
it
bring you
Rob?
up to speed, bring you up
Rob,
to
the
par
good
with everybody
guy.
else.
Hold
And
on a second.
so taking away the federal money that goes to some of these poorer schools, you know, um, that I think is going to hurt a lot of smart kids that can't afford to go to college. With I thought I saw that they were reducing some of the Pell Grant money as well. But what do you think the
Mhm.
end game is with the Department of Education going away? Is it that they're just trying to make more worker bees for the rich oligarch companies by not, educating society? What are your thoughts on that? What do you think the end game is?
Yeah, this is one of the things that's actually not necessarily unique to Trump. This has been sort of on the Republican agenda for years. They never thought that they could get it done, just like they never thought they'd get Roe v. Wade overturned. But now it looks like they're maybe going to try and get it done. We'll see. I don't know if we can get through Congress. Um, but yeah, I think there's a lot of elements to it. I think the biggest element, to be honest with you, has to do with their attack on DEI. Um, Department of Education historically, we'd still be segregated if it wasn't for the Department of Education, essentially, in some places. When Jimmy Carter established it, there were still some places in this country that were segregated as of the late 1970s. I know it's a shock to a lot of people, but that was the case. And then they defend people's rights. So let's say you're a Jewish student at Columbia University and you felt like there were anti-Semitic things going on, right? You could turn to the Department of Education to protect your civil rights, and now that's no longer the case. That's one of those things that's definitely on the chopping block, unfortunately. Um, hold on a second, this guy. Now, in terms of the other stuff, so the big the big thing that's scary for I know me personally, and for the economy for that matter, is student loans. I don't know if you guys have heard, but they've already gotten rid of the application for income-based recertification. So we have to do that every year. I'm on income-based. I'm currently on the SAVE plan, which I haven't made a payment in 5 years now. They're talking about getting rid of all of these income-based plans and just reverting back to essentially what you owe. So in my case, I've paid more on my loans than what I took out in the first place, and yet my principal is well over $200,000. So I could be looking at $3,000 to $4,000 a month, which there's no way I can afford that. And there's tons of people across the country that are like this. So when it comes to student loans, I think they probably get a little bit of a pushback from that, um, but we'll see. I don't know. But yeah, I think is gonna the part that's the saddest is Title One funding, specifically school lunch programs, things like that. Especially if you're in a red state, in California, I think we'll probably still have those. We'll find a way. But if you're in a red state, it's just going to be horribly devastating. I know my son both of my sons go to a Title One school just because of where we live. For those of you not familiar, it's the percentage of people in the school that would qualify for a school lunch program. That's what makes a Title One school, and they get all kinds of extra programs because of it. And a lot of these kids at the school, everything from childcare to robotics programs, you name it, these kids couldn't afford that or do this outside of that, and all that could potentially be on the chopping block. So I know I'm a little bit long-winded there, but yeah, the Department of Education situation is very concerning. I think Republicans want to revert back to, just like they do with everything else. Donald Trump talks about reverting back to the golden age of America. I think he wants only private education, private school, and if you can't afford that, too bad. Um, and I think that's the kind of society that they want to bring us back to. So I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in on that. Workout Logic, you there?
Hello, how are you
How's it going?
doing this
Good. You want
evening?
to chime
Yeah,
in?
pretty good.
Sorry, I know I was
Yeah,
talking a
I
lot. So
no, no, not at all. Yeah, I'm very concerned about this whole Department of Education thing because what's going to happen with
A cult of person.
obviously blue. Sorry, is that me? That's not me.
no, it's not you. It's
Okay, sorry.
we got a somebody that's
A
trying to have fun
musician.
with us here. So yeah, there we go. All right,
Okay.
go for it.
Um, how is that going to affect blue states versus red states and the federal funding and what are individual states going to? I'm in Illinois, I'm in Chicago. You know, blue city, blue state, I feel relatively protected here, but how does that work for federal funding?
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. It's going to depend on how they structure it. But even for blue states, I know in California we were facing a budget deficit last year, following COVID, and so I don't know how much we'd be able to make up for if we lost federal funding for certain things. But I do think that blue states will make more of an effort, to try to salvage that. In red states, though, we've already seen states block Medicaid, right? Money that taxpayer money that their citizens paid, they're not getting because their governors don't want Medicaid, don't want their citizens to. I don't know, whatever their ideology is. So
Correct.
yeah, so
My best friend is in Florida and they did not do the Medicare expansion and now she can't get certain things covered because of her illness. And all he had to do was say yes, but DeSantis didn't want to. Yeah, I don't understand how
it's
not
crazy.
helping sick people is owning the libs, but that's apparently how they think.
It's unbelievable. It's I guess I need to stop saying that. Maybe it's we all just need to kind of transition mentally. I think that's where we're having a hard time. None of us ever thought that this kind of thing could happen in the United States, um, and now we're here, and I think we're all having trouble shifting mindset. So everything
Now,
seems
do you think
crazy.
that we will actually have a fair midterm election considering all of the Republican legislation that's gone through with voter ID, voter suppression? I'm still, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, but I'm still not completely unconvinced that Elon maybe didn't do something during the election. I don't, it just, I, I understand 2 million people didn't vote, but I can't wrap my head around more people voted for Trump.
It's I'll be honest, with you, I wasn't surprised. So J Mac knows that I've been predicting a Trump victory now for 2 years. Um, the country is in a much different place than I think most progressives want to admit. I think where a lot of us are in echo chambers, and so it's hard for us to realize exactly what country this is. But honestly, it's the same country it's always been. These elements were just staying quiet for a while, and now they're out. So, um,
Part of me, I mean, I did agree with you, that there was a chance he was going to win, but part of me felt like, you know what? We had a president, a Democratic president in the White House for the past 12 of the last 16 years. And okay, they won. Let's just sit back, grab some popcorn, and watch them light their hair on fire, and let's just let them do their thing. Let's see what they can do. It's time for let's take a water break and let them grab a shovel and get to work. Let's see what they can do. And just what they've done in these short months, it's just really scary. It is a different America
yeah,
for sure.
we don't have a time. We don't have time to wait for another election because let's say we win the midterms, then what? What does that change? They're not going to listen to subpoenas. They're not going to come in front of committee. Um, I don't see how that changes anything. And so I think right now, we have to go straight to the fighting autocracy playbook. If you all have a chance, read. It's by Anne Applebaum. She is a foreign policy expert and has analyzed autocracies around the world. The book is called Autocracy Inc. And she goes over each playbook, and it's exactly what Trump is doing. We're just not waking up to it yet. But that's how we have to be thinking. So we've got to be, thinking about getting in the streets. We've got to be loud. We've got to start waking people up because not enough people are awake yet in this country. and that's really our only avenue. You know, it's like the Orange Revolution. It's like you're seeing in Serbia now, 3 million people in the streets in Serbia. In the United States, that would look like something like 50 million people in the streets. And so I think we've got to get to that point. I don't know what it's going to take for us to get to that point, but we need to get there.
When the vote
At
count.
what?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, at what point do we? Because I know Chuck Schumer was just on, I think it was The View, and he said he doesn't feel like we're there yet. And obviously, the rest of us are like, no, we're here, we're in trouble. At what point is it when Trump completely ignores the judges, which isn't he sort of already doing? Like, how, fascism takes over in tiny steps. So what step is finally going to wake people up? I feel like they're just not.
I don't know. It's really tough. I think one of the big factors here is the Israeli lobby. I think the Israeli lobby and AIPAC are doing a lot for Trump politically that he wouldn't get otherwise, keeping people like Chuck Schumer at bay. So I really don't know what it's going to take to wake him up. I feel like we've been saying this since 2016. I know I have. Like, hey, this is where we're headed, and nobody seems to listen. I think it's just got to affect enough people. Enough people have to have a loved one that's abducted by ICE or dies of measles or, you name any of the ills, unfortunately. I think that's what it's going to take.
I think if they do make cuts to Social Security, for example, there's going to be a lot of red states that are going to see their parents or grandparents, have less money if they're living on Social Security, and that might wake them up, hopefully.
I hope so. I know I have heard, a lot of Republicans locally. I've now talked to, 4 or 5 people. It's obviously just a handful of Trump voters that are now regretting their decision. So I do think people are waking up. It's just really slow. It's really slow. I'm still a believer that a lot of Trump supporters are good people. They just don't follow this stuff like we do,
Well, the farmers are now suing the Trump administration to try to get the Biden grants back. So I know a lot of farmers are at least questioning their vote.
Crazy. Hey, Shimcode?
It's
You wanna chime in?
Tracy.
Oh, sorry. Tracy, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I had actually a couple questions. One was, did you hear about the 430,000 immigrants that Donald Trump is canceling their visas or whatever it is they're in the United States on, and he told them either go back to your country or get arrested?
Yeah, that's so I started out with that story, I think, tonight. So is it the 530,000 Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans that we were talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the CHNV humanitarian parole program that they were offered has now been revoked. So 500,000 people now have to leave the country.
It's ridiculous. And
Unbelievable.
the other question I had was about Donald Trump said that if Elon Musk is not allowed access to Social Security, that he would shut it down.
Hmm. That doesn't surprise me. I haven't heard that, but it wouldn't surprise me. I do think, though, we got to be careful about, we got to make sure that we're telling people real legitimate stories. Like, yeah, there's a lot of things that might come down the road. I've seen some stories that circulate on TikTok that are not quite accurate, and we don't really need to be doing that. There's enough horrific stuff out there to talk about, right? We don't need to be making up things to be scared of. I'm not saying you're doing that in this case. I'm just saying.
Right.
Gotta be
No,
watchful of those things.
I understand. It was on Facebook on Occupy Democrat.
Hmm.
Pretty legitimate, I think, website, but I don't know.
Occupy is interesting. Occupy puts out like accurate stories, but they're highly hyperbolic to where it borders on disinformation.
Okay.
So it's like, yeah, the stories are accurate, but really exaggerated.
Okay.
So I just tend to think we don't need to do that, right? We can dive into the real facts here. We've been able to do that since 2016, and we've got enough there.
Right.
And then he's also considering revoking legal protections for 240,000 Ukrainians that came here fleeing the war. So that's where we're at. And then obviously countries around the world are issuing travel warnings because, there was just a French citizen, for instance, academic. I think he was a doctor or scientist, and he was detained, and the French government is pissed off now. So I don't know where this ends. I don't. Wish we had something
We were at
uplifting to
the
talk about.
we were at this wedding. We were at this
Yeah.
wedding tonight, and we were at a table with with some people. And we were talking and having a good time, and conversation kind of led towards education. One of the ladies that was there was a teacher, and it was just interesting because we were like meeting these people, and we were going to go to Fredericksburg and do some wine tasting tomorrow. But then it kind of crept up that, that they're Trump supporters, and now my wife and I are like, okay, how do we excuse ourselves from going to wine tasting after, because that's not going to be good.
Right. I have friends like that. It's like it's the type of friends you limit to like seeing them at parties. You're not going to spend an extended period of time with them.
Yeah. Things got awkward. Things are like, oh shit, you're a Trump supporter, shit. But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
they,
I'm too old to even waste energy on anybody who, because this, guys, this is not regular difference of politics, right? This is like moral being that you just, I couldn't. I don't know how people can maintain friendships with Trumpers, and I hear it from on my Facebook page. I talk politics a lot, and I have a lot of people who argue with me that are Trumpers, but I wouldn't consider them
Wow, you're
friends because
still
I
on
don't
Facebook.
hang out
You're
with them.
brave.
Yeah. But it's like I don't understand. I cut off a 20-year friendship because my friend started dating this Polish immigrant who was very pro-Trump. He totally brainwashed her. She's Mexican American. And I was just like, I cannot be friends with you any longer. Because she called me up screaming during the George Floyd, the protests, saying that the protesters killed a man. And I don't know if you remember the story. The guy ran out drunk from a bar, holding a sword, running around saying the N-word, and he got the shit kicked out of him. And then it spiraled into a conspiracy that he was unalived by them and all this other stuff. And then that's what she came at me with. And I was just like,
Interesting.
I can't. After 20, no, I just can't do it.
Well, I talked about the book earlier by Anne Applebaum, The Autocracy Inc. And one of the recommendations she gives in all this, I know, like, kind of going back to what do we do about this? Because we can't do anything legislatively. What she recommends is everybody, even if you haven't posted on social media before, just pump out the facts. So you can go to like, some of the good sites are like the AP, the Guardian. Let me see if I have a list here. Give me 1 second. There we go. I did have a list.
Midas Touch?
Anyway. Midas Touch isn't really a news source. I like Midas Touch, but they're not like it's not journalism, right? That's more like
True, yeah.
commentary like I do. But yeah, I would go to those basics. Find good journalists. That's really the key, is to find those good journalists. I actually think NBC News is ranked really highly in terms of accuracy. Their website, and there's a few others. But just share facts. Constantly share facts, because that's what's going to happen. Misinformation becomes so overwhelming that we can't sway people anymore. We can't do anything about it. But if we all collectively just start pumping in facts, that can be really helpful. So
Yeah, what I've been doing is using AI, and when I argue with Trumpers, I purposely use Elon's AI because, yeah, just because at least as AI stands now, it is strictly gathering information and spitting it back out into from one place, right? So it's not biased at the moment. So I encourage my liberal friends to use ChatGPT and Grok and feed it, because you're the one that's actually shaping how it spits out information, because you can actually correct it as well as you're using it.
Sure. Here's I found the list again. Sorry, AP, Reuters, BBC News, the Wall Street Journal. Actually, still, although that one's starting to questionable. They have spoken out against Trump a few times. Bloomberg, the New York Times, but I think I'd take that one off this list now. C-SPAN, if you want to watch video. NPR needs a help in all kinds of ways, so if you can donate to them. Forbes, NBC News, those are all very accurate source of information. So,
what's the name of the book one more time?
Autocracy Inc.
Autocracy Inc.
So she's she worked in the State Department, I think. But there's a playbook here. So there's been a playbook now for, she talks about this other world. It sounds very conspiratorial, but it's really not. But there's this other world. It's very like mob gangster like, a lot of CEOs that are essentially running the world through autocracies, in a very transactional basis. And the playbook for those leaders has been the same every time, whether it's Viktor Orban or what's his name in the Philippines, my mind's blanking, Netanyahu, Putin. Across the board, it's the same playbook that Trump is using now. And so she goes over a lot of that and how to fight it. And I think we still have a little bit of time, I think. So I'd read it. There's also the book On Tyranny. It's kind of a shorter read, but gives you a lot of... It's depressing to read, so be careful when you read it, because it really launches your brain into where we're actually at. But it gives a lot of good advice as well.
Okay, I'll have to pick it up. What's her name again?
Anne Applebaum.
Anne Applebaum. Okay, I'm reading. I just started Careless People. The Sarah Wynne Williams. She worked with Mark Zuckerberg. It's the one that he's not trying to, to make sure there's no publicity on. So after I'm done with this, I'll pick that up.
Yeah, she's a writer for The Atlantic, but she does a lot of things. So, Autocracy Inc.